are post-transfer portal and post-Nick Saban retirement top 12 teams in the country. Because no longer is it top 4, the who's in sort of commercials. Those are gone. You might still have those commercials, but that bracket is going to look a little bit larger with 8 more teams. And Alabama, we viewed them a certain way, I think, after that confetti dropped in Houston. How do we view them now? Let's give you our top 12 teams for the 2024 season. These are not predictions. These are not projections. This is very much so a feel on these teams before we get into spring practice and we get more portal movement and all that. So, at number 12, let's get right to it, man. I got Utah at number 12. And for me, Utah may be one of the most high-floor teams in America. Kyle Whittingham, every single year, dude, you just know what you're going to get in his kind of team. Like 3 of the last 4 real seasons, he's had double-digit wins. I say real seasons because of the last 5, they had a 5-game season they played. We're not really going to factor that in. The bottom line is they're always tough. They pretty much play the same brand of football every single year, tough on the line of scrimmage. And Cam Rising is back for another year in the saddle as the quarterback at Utah. Didn't play last year, got a red shirt. So I think they're poised for a very big season in the Big 12. And the Big 12, we'll talk about them a little bit more later. But there's some spots at the top of that conference in terms of most talented rosters that are wide open. So Utah for us, number 12, post Nick Saban retirement and post transfer portal. Now, speaking of the transfer portal, one team that has continued to crush it in the portal is Florida State. Now, Florida State, for some of y'all, they might be a little bit low on this list. That's all right. I think they have probably the greatest chance to ascend up these rankings. They're just replacing a lot of key pieces, right? Keon Coleman, gone to the NFL. Johnny Wilson, gone to the NFL. Jaheim Bell, Jordan Travis, like a lot of staples from last year's team that went undefeated during the regular season and won the ACC. They're now gone from that roster. So that's the unfortunate part. But the fortunate part, like we already talked about, Mike Norvell just does the portal. Like that's his thing. They crush the portal every single year. They're doing better on the recruiting side of things with success on the field. But when it comes to transfer portal acquisitions, the key one I'm curious about is DJ Uiagalelei. Back to the ACC. They will play Clemson this season. That'll be must-see TV. My question for DJU is, does he keep the offense multiple? Because one of the things that you loved last year as a Florida State fan was how balanced that operation was offensively. And DJU has had some inconsistency throughout the course of his career with pushing the ball downfield. Has that been sort of taken care of since his time at Clemson? Did his time at Oregon State sort of help him get back on track? And was it a Clemson thing? Was it a DJU thing? I don't know, but we'll get a very good gauge for it this upcoming season. Last thing I'll say about Florida State and DJU, Mike Norvell got to see a lot of DJU during his time at Florida State and with DJU being at Clemson. So if there was anybody that had a strong take on DJU, positive or negative, it was Mike Norvell. So the fact that he went after him in the transfer portal should tell us a little bit about how he feels about him, regardless the way they've attacked the portal with those 14 transfers, trying to fill some of those holes that they're losing. That's going to be a big factor in their success. So Florida State at number 11 for us in this way too early college football rankings in the preseason with our top 12. At number 10, I got Missouri. And Missouri, man, the question for me is, can they recreate the magic as well as the heat from 2023? Because Missouri, as good as they were last year, they had 4 wins by 1 score. And they finished the year, their last 6 games, going 5-1. Their only loss there being to Georgia, with obviously the biggest win coming their last game of the season against Ohio State. Brady, let him cook, is back at quarterback. Luther Burden is back. Theo Weiss is back. No Cody Schrader. But this is a team that when they got rolling at the end of last season, this 12-team playoff was built for them. Like, I don't think anybody wanted to play Missouri when it came to that 12-team playoff if you had seen them in the first round. So can they recreate what they had going in 2023 and pick up where they left off in 2024, even without Cody Schrader? We'll see. But Eli Drinkwitz getting a little bit of an extension from the powers that be at Missouri. Boss moves by them. I like the roster. Can they get the momentum going, though, from 2023 and carry it into 2024? Missouri at number 10. At number 9, I'm trusting the trend here, baby, with Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame. They're at number 9 for me. They went 8-4, Marcus Freeman's first year as the head coach in South Bend. 9-3 this past season. So, okay, we're taking incremental improvements. What does year 3 look like? I like the roster. My question is, can Mike Denbrock do with Riley Leonard what he did with Jaden Daniels? Because I think that system, if they run a similar kind of offense that they did in Baton Rouge, I think it plays pretty well to his skill set. Riley Leonard, is he the dual threat that Jaden Daniels is? No, but he's still a guy that can tuck it and hurt you if he is able to get downhill with some steam. Like, different kind of player, but similar skill set in that regard. If they can be explosive offensively, I really like the young talent they have. Benjamin Morrison, he's back. Jaden Greathouse, obviously, he's back. Like, they got some dudes here that can really contribute, that cycle up from a season ago. So I trust Marcus Freeman. He is continuing to challenge everything within that program, and I love the fact that he is making no negotiations about what they expect of Notre Dame. You're not playing for conference titles. You're playing for national titles. So they keep pushing the envelope every single offseason. This offseason has been no exception. Notre Dame, I like the trend they have right now. They're for me at number 9 right now. Now, at number 8, I got Penn State. And for Penn State, man, that window is still very much wide open because we sat here last offseason and we talked about Drew Aller and how good he could be, and Nick Singleton and Katron Allen coming off their freshman season, going to be super sophomores. And then you had another 10-2 season, which I'm telling you, most places they would love to be 10-2. I mean, some coaches are getting bonuses at 10-2. The good folks in Happy Valley are unhappy with 10-2 because those 2 losses coming to Michigan and to Ohio State. Okay, so there's kind of this feeling of like a ceiling on Penn State. But going back to what I said at the top of this thing, that window for them is still very much wide open. That young talent gets another season of experience now. They bring back Nick Singleton. They bring back Abdul Carter. Drew Aller gets another year as a starting quarterback. If they can be more explosive, sky's the limit for them. Because we saw last year that there was no second year for them. And we saw that probably most exclusively, I suppose, in that game against Ohio State, where they weren't able to match them when Marvin Harrison Jr. kind of took over, or in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl when Ole Miss kind of started to pour it on. Like, if they can have an element where they can push the ball downfield and couple that with that young backfield, and then couple that with how good their defense I expect to be next season, even without Manny Diaz being the defensive coordinator, still a lot of good personnel. The window is still open. If they can be more explosive offensively, they're going to have a chance. Also worth noting, this 12-team format, I think also really benefits a team like Penn State. Because that's fine if you can't beat Michigan and you can't beat Ohio State. 10-2 gets you in the playoff. So for Penn State, if they can be more explosive, they're going to have a chance. They're going to have a chance. So Penn State at number 8. Now, this is why we got to do this kind of list. Because, like I said, a lot of shakeups. The transfer portal is given and taken. Nick Saban and his retirement obviously sent ripple effects across the college football landscape. At number 7, we got Alabama. Now, after the national championship game, the day after, rather, you probably had Alabama somewhere within your top 5, top 6. We got them at 7. The roster is still very good. Like, the cupboard might not be stocked how it was, but it's not bare. The real question I have is, how does it mesh in year 1 with Kalen DeBoer and the pieces that he still has in Tuscaloosa? Because Jalen Milroe, as good as he is not Michael Penix Jr. He is not a guy you're going to plug into that offense you ran a season ago and expect them to throw it 57% of the time. That's not who Jalen Milroe is. That's not who Alabama wants to be. Or Alabama as a fan base would want to be, I would imagine. So can they work with these pieces and make them fit? Because Ryan Grubb and Kalen DeBoer talked a lot about, adapting to their personnel and playing to their strengths. So I think that's the case. I don't think it'll look the same, but how do you pivot is my question. How do you pivot from what you did last year now with Jalen Milroe playing quarterback for you? And it has to be said, man, having almost 30 guys transfer out, how do the guys that are still in Tuscaloosa pick up the slack and step up in their absence? Because, like I said, still a lot of good players. Nick Saban has recruited at a top 2 level for pretty much the last 5-6 years. Like, pretty much top 2 classes only in Tuscaloosa right now on campus if you signed out of high school. But still, like, the guys that are there probably are guys that are not necessarily a ton of guys that got a ton of snaps. Like, there's some inexperience you're going to have to deal with here for Alabama, and stabilizing that in year 1 for Kalen DeBoer is going to be massive. Now, again, 12-team format. If Alabama goes 10-2, heck, maybe 9-3, if it's the right kind of 9-3, they could still be in the playoff. I have questions, but from a roster standpoint and from a head coach standpoint, I'm going to go ahead and put Alabama at number 7 as of right now. So now we kind of break into this top 6. And this is sort of how we did our rankings throughout the season with, our first 2 out in top 4. I mean, we're nearing the territory now in our rankings where we're just going to have essentially the teams that are auto bids. Now, again, this is not predictions, but this is how we see this top 6 shaking out. Again, if you're not already subscribed, would encourage you to do so. We appreciate you for that. All right, at number 6, I got the national champs, the Michigan Wolverines. Now, my assumption here with putting them at 6 is that Jim Harbaugh will not be the head coach, and in fact, Sherrone Moore will be the head coach. If Sherrone Moore is not the head coach, I might feel differently about where I put Michigan. I might put them a little bit lower. The reason for that being, I have them at 6 because they have the culture and the process that won a national championship last year still intact if they make Sherrone Moore the next head coach. Now, if Jim Harbaugh doesn't leave, which, again, I expect him to based on everything that's being said right now in the college football world and the NFL world, that championship culture is still intact is the bottom line I want to make sure we talk about here. The key players for Michigan, a lot of those guys are still back. Like, yes, you lose J.J. McCarthy to the league. You lose Blake Corum to the league. But Colston Loveland, he's back. Donovan Edwards, he's back. Mason Graham was a human wrecking ball, especially in that college football playoff last year. The whole world got to see big number 55. He's back. There's a lot of key pieces here. The bones are really good at Michigan. So my question now, and depending on how, depending on how they address this, will kind of dictate how good Michigan is next year. What happens at quarterback? Because the original thought was, well, they could go to the portal and try and land a guy to elevate that room. And Will Rogers last night announced, hey, he's going back to Washington. He's withdrawing his name from the transfer portal. So you're looking at the options in the portal, and it feels like it's pretty slim. Talia Tagovailoa was a guy I was talking about for a period of time. He's not getting a waiver, so he's gone to the league. Like, in terms of who you have to draw from right now in the transfer portal, there's not a ton of options. So your options are either take somebody random in this transfer portal cycle, which I don't know who you'd even take. Alex Orji could be a guy you roll with, and he's obviously a good athlete. I just truly haven't seen him throw the football very much, so I don't know what he brings to the table there. He could be a guy that contributes to that ground control kind of style of offense Michigan's played the last couple of seasons. Maybe you just double down on that with him as your quarterback. The other door you could step into is that post-spring transfer portal window and try and take a quarterback there. Now, the only concern there, for me at least, is those 15 practices you get are the most important practices of your season. They set the tone for everything you're going to do going forward. And especially for the quarterback, man, I think it's pretty crucial to have a guy in there getting those reps during those 15 practices. So if you feel strongly about what you have in-house in a negative sense, and you feel strongly about who ends up being available in that second portal window, more power to you. But that's going to be a very big variable, obviously, for Michigan as it pertains to their success in 2024. But if you make Sherrone Moore the head coach, I think you solidify a really high floor for your season, and you keep that championship culture and standards in-house. You keep a good thing going. So I have Michigan at 6 in our rankings here. Now, at number 5, I got Ole Miss. I got Ole Miss at number 5. Coach Kiffin and the boys, man, the time is now for them. Do not get it twisted. They are all in on 2024. Their path to the college football playoff, it's steeper, sure. It's definitely wider. No longer do you have to win your side of the SEC and make it to Atlanta and then win that, and hopefully you find your way in the college football playoff. Like, no more divisions this upcoming season in the SEC. It's full-on Hungry Game style. You don't have to beat Georgia. You don't have to beat Alabama. You know what I mean? Like, you could drop 2 games and still make the college football playoff if you're Lane Kiffin and company. Now, that's not in the plan, but just so we're on the same page there, that is possible for this team. They have some key players returning. Most notably, Jackson Dart and Trey Harris. I mean, those dudes were a lethal 1-2 punch last season. Jackson Dart took a huge step from year 1 to year 2 in Lane Kiffin's offense. From 2 to 3, what happens there? If he takes even another evolution in his progress as the quarterback there, they will be even more dangerous. Okay, you feel pretty good about what they have offensively. And then they've also engaged in portal combat. Several teams are doing it. Ole Miss is doing it as good as anyone. The number 3 portal class right now, at the time of us being live, they've addressed some crucial spots. Most notably, defensive line. Princely Umanmielen, Walter Nolan, 2 top 10 players in the transfer portal, both on the defensive line, both experienced in the SEC, both taking their talents to Oxford, Mississippi. Oh, and by the way, Juice Wells, too, stud wide receiver at South Carolina. He's coming to Oxford, too. Oh, and Logan Diggs. You lose Quinshon Judkins, that's too bad. You bring in Logan Diggs, who also has played ball in the SEC. You expect him to be a factor for you in that backfield. So across the board here for Ole Miss, like, they've pushed all their chips to the table, said, hey, we're all in. Let's do this. The time is now. And I like their roster a lot. I like their momentum a lot. I'm a big fan of Jackson Dart. For me, Ole Miss is at number 5. I love where they sit right now in January, heading into 2024. Now, at number 4, I got Oregon. And Oregon has reloaded as well as anybody in the country via the portal. You lose Bo Nix, your leader, your steady hand, You're an experienced guy. So what do? You go in and bring in left-handed Bo Nix from high money. Still a good athlete. Played a ton of football. Dylan Gabriel from UCF and Oklahoma, most recently Oklahoma, is going to run the show for you. I think that's as proven a commodity as you could find across the college football landscape playing quarterback for you. I love that. Then you lose Troy Franklin. Stud wide receiver for you. Absolute dog. You go out and get arguably the best offensive player in the portal. That's a skill player in Evan Stewart from Texas A&M. Super talented, tons of ability. I don't expect them to take any steps back offensively. And as we sit here in January, like the whole preseason conversation around which college football team you're ranking where, like for me, a lot of that conversation, because we can't predict what's going to happen in certain games just yet. Like what happens on, the fourth quarter when it's Georgia and Alabama in September and it's a 3-point game. Like that's such a wormhole to dive down. It's not really fair for us to do. What I think is fair for us to do right now, though, is talk about leaders in college football, who the head coaches are. And there's not a college football head coach that I trust more right now than Dan Lanning. Like the way that he carries himself, the way that he does things, his team follows. And so that means they're going to be tough. They're going to have a strong culture, going to be competitive as heck. They're going to be aggressive. So all of those components, being who I believe Dan Lanning is, and as a result, being who Oregon football is, that makes them scary when you pair that with this roster and what they've done through the portal. So I love where Oregon sits right now, moving into the Big Ten. I do not expect them to have this recalibration period to take a step back from me. They are number 4 in our top 12 as we sit here in January. Now at number 3, we got the Texas Longhorns. Pause for dramatic effect there. Texas, to me, is poised for another run. Now I'm interested in the defense, because no more Byron Murphy, no more T'Vondre Sweat. Those dudes were absolute hosses for them in the middle of that defense. But when you look at this offense, man, I think they have what's required to make another go at what they did last year. Now, there's no replacing Adonai Mitchell. There's no replacing Xavier Worthy. But you went out and got Isaiah Bond, went out and got Silas Bolden, went out and got Amari Niblack. Like, they got some dudes now that can stretch the field for you, and I think they are up to par with the ingredients that Steve Sarkisian needs to get that offense cooking. Most importantly now, they are experienced at the leadership positions. Like Steve Sarkisian had already been there and done that as an OC. He'd already won a national title with Nick Saban. But the fact that he's now won a conference championship and made the college football playoff as a head coach, and oh, by the way, he's had a quarterback that's done that with him now going into year 3 of his system, I think that matters. I think it's going to give him a steady hand in a lot of these games in the SEC, especially on the road. They got some skins on the wall. Probably the biggest confidence booster is that win in Tuscaloosa last year by double digits. I like Texas a lot. I love what they're doing in the portal. Andrew Makuba, also one of the top safeties via the portal, is headed to Texas. I like where they sit right now for me. They're at number 3. Now, these top 2, quite honestly, this top 3, any order you put it in, I don't think I'd have a ton of objections to where you ranked these teams. But at number 2, I got the Ohio State Buckeyes. And just to make sure we're on the same page here, post-national championship game, I don't think I would have had them at number 2. But the way they have just attacked the portal, man, they've upped that roster talent quite a bit, in my opinion. And listen, when it comes down to for me with Ohio State, they have both the quantifiable and the unquantifiable in some really interesting spots. The quantifiable, obviously, is the roster talent. Like what they have on paper with Will Howard being a proven commodity at quarterback. I think he is an upgrade from Kyle McCord. He brings that mobile element to the offense. He's won some ball games, got a Big 12 championship on his resume. I think that matters. Quinshon Judkins, did you need to go and add another running back? Maybe not, but you went and got the best running back in the portal to pair with Trevion Henderson, who has shown he is a dude when he's healthy. Caleb Downs, the best player in the portal, making his way to Columbus and joining a defense that was already going to be top 10, top 5 in the country, with JT Tuimoloau coming back, Jack Sawyer coming back. Like, I'm kind of sounding like I'm just listing off names like I'm an auctioneer here, but all those dudes are tier 1 kind of players that are going to contribute in a big way to what Ohio State wants to get done. So we talk about the quantifiable for Ohio State, the things that you can try and place a value on. Ohio State has that at a top 2 level, in my opinion. But the unquantifiable is what really makes them scary to me. Because right now, man, this team, they're kind of backed into a wall, backed into a corner a little bit, back against the wall, if you will. Ryan Day and this team has a very real sense of urgency because the standard's always what it is in Columbus. It's always win the Big Ten, beat Michigan, win national championships. But to not fulfill that several years in a row now and to do what they've done via the portal and up that talent level, the pressure is as high as it's been in Columbus, in my opinion. Now, I'm not saying if they don't come through on what they expect to do, there's going to be changes. I'm not saying that, but I am saying the pressure is immense. As it always is, it's kicked up a few notches. So you take that and you pair it with what they have in-house. That's dangerous. That's dangerous because Ohio State, the chip on their shoulder, I don't think has ever been more massive. The sense of urgency for them, I don't think has ever been more massive. And to be honest, that reminds me a lot of what that other team that they were playing against last couple of years that won a national title last year had. Like, it gives me the same vibe. It gives me the same, like, this year is the year kind of feel to it. That's what they got to be thinking in-house at least. They always think that, but you hear what I'm saying. The urgency and the chip on the shoulder, I think, makes Ohio State dangerous, especially when you pair that with the firepower they have on their roster. So for me, Ohio State sitting at number 2 in our early top 12. Now, last thing we got to get to here, at number 1, no surprise, the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia lost the best player for a lot of people's money in America in Brock Bowers to the NFL. And we still sit here in January and say that's probably the best team in America. I don't have a ton of questions about them. I'm not saying they don't have weaknesses. I'm just saying I don't have a ton of concerns about Georgia heading into 2024. Because offensively, they got better through the portal, adding Trevor Etienne, adding Colby Young, adding London Humphreys, Michael Jackson. You bring back a tier 1 quarterback in Carson Beck who gets another year in the system, which I think was a great move by him to come back for his NFL prospects and for what Georgia's going to be in 2024. And you talk about the defense, it's Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann running the show. Enough said. Like, I don't think you have any reason to be concerned about the defense if those two individuals are involved. And similar to what I said about Ohio State, man, this is a team that's hungry. Like, Georgia, for the last couple of seasons, Kirby Smart has had to sort of manufacture the naysayers and sort of really push the doubt into their face, like kind of grabbing a headline and then bring it to their attention. This Georgia team, they don't have to search for headlines. They don't have to search for, people that are doubting them. A lot of people doubting them. A lot of people talking about Ole Miss right now or Ohio State, about Oregon, about the movement of the college football playoff going to 12 teams, about Texas. Like, there's a lot of buzz right now that's against what Georgia is right now. And I think overall, you hear those headlines, and for some teams that kind of distracts them. I think for Georgia, that honestly just motivates them. I think that's ammunition for Kirby Smart and company. So all that's to say, Georgia's dangerous because of their roster, but similar to Ohio State, they are more dangerous because of the chip they have on their shoulder and how hungry they are. Hungry Georgia is a dangerous Georgia. Do not get it twisted. So to recap it for you, our top 12 here, post transfer portal and post Nick Saban retirement, is as follows. We got Utah at 12. We got Florida State at 11. Missouri at 10. Notre Dame at 9. Penn State at 8. Alabama down to 7. We'll see what they are with the new Kalen DeBoer era getting started and a little bit of movement on that roster. A lot of movement on that roster. Michigan at 6. Assuming Sharon Moore is the head coach there. Ole Miss at 5. Oregon at 4. Texas at 3. Ohio State at 2. And the Georgia Bulldogs at number 1. As we sit here in January, that's what we have for our top 12. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.